I'm Andy the Northern Diver, and welcome to another edition of our weekly blog. This episode we're going to be talking about dive torches, and specifically the kind of torches that me and my wife use that we found that give us more options should the battery die, need replacing or need to be charged. Gives us more longevity to the battery charge that we have with us, and give us more options when we're in the water depending on what we're doing. So if you look, the two different setups, very similar in the way that they're made up, but completely different in sort of the component parts. So the first one, this is mine. So I've got a light monkey umbilical torch. So it's basically a light head that comes on a long waterproof cable to quite a large battery pack. The only means of turning it on or off are from the switch on top of the battery pack, and the light head itself isn't adjustable or variable in its focus. So it gives, much like the sides of the light head, it gives off a great big sort of floodlight from there, but a nice big central spotlight that will cut through the water and get some real good range and depth with that light. So it's quite powerful. It's in excess of 1,000 lumens, so it's really bright. Wouldn't want to sort of shine it in your eye, and that comes from one great big LED that's based in the bottom. With it being LED, it lasts a much longer period whilst it's permanently on. But cracking bit of kit, very expensive when you think about it. As a backup torch then, I've got this Light for Me torch. Now this takes 3 smaller batteries, and they are just available from your local hardware store, which is ideal because if, for instance, you're away on a dive somewhere quite remote, for whatever reason you've no batteries in it, you could probably nip to any old corner shop and get batteries to fit that. This is turned on just by twisting the light head from clockwise to anti-clockwise, and it's not, again, variable. It's either on or it's off. And what you don't want to do is start unscrewing it more than it needs just to turn it from on to off. It's literally, that is it. So then my backup torch for that is the same light head again from Light for Me, but a much smaller body this time. So now moving on to my wife's kit, she's got a Green Force torch, and they generally don't supply the Goodman handle to hold onto your torch with. So this is bought from a company that we use quite a lot, and this is made by Dive Right. It's got quite a bit of adjustability to it, so should you have a bigger or smaller hand, or you've got gloves on in the winter, you can adjust that so it fits you. It's got a variable light head, so as you tighten that up, it becomes quite bright and then gets brighter the further you turn it in, or dimmer the further you wind it out. And again, much like my backup torches, to the point that it turns off, it's then off. So you don't need to wind it all the way out, because if you do that, the potential of water ingress, certainly at quite some of the depths that we do go to, water could get in there and it'll just screw around with all the electrics, and before you know it, you've lost quite an expensive torch. The battery, unlike my torch, doesn't have any switch mechanism and is connected via this umbilical, which is great because it stands out being green. So first of all, everyone knows you've got a Green Force torch, but second of all, it stands out against the black of either your suit or some of your other hoses, so it won't be confused should your dive buddy need an octopus, or if there's a problem with your kit being all tangled, we know which one is your torch and which one's a hose and whatnot. So on my wife's backup kit, much like mine, she's got a larger torch. This one comes from Northern Diver. This is the Verilux Travel 2. Now when the battery's in, there's a LED ring around here that'll light green or flash green when you've got power. And basically you press and hold the button, and that varies how bright it is, and it'll dim down to the point that it then turns off. It also is great because it can tell you whether there's charge in the battery or not. If it's green, then it's good to go, and if it's red, it's almost dead, so you need to get it charged. Now they come with the torches themselves and a charger and cables, so that's great. That great bit of kit. It's also got a loop at the top, so we can get these bolt snaps in to clip them to our kit, or if you want to put it inside a pocket, clip it onto a bungee within your pocket or something. Anything like this to make sure you're not going to drop it or it's not going to fall out your pocket is always ideal. Now with these, we've zip tied them on just to see if that's a viable method, whereas on mine, you can see I've tied them on using a little bit of paracord, burnt the ends and nipped them off. So we're going to see which one's better. Personally, I prefer this because once it's off, there's a lot more freedom of movement, and the likelihood of the paracord breaking versus the zip tie, as you can see, that'll stand bolt upright, but it'll sit nice and neat on my kit to that end. I'm just dubious of whether there's enough play in that will allow it to perform rather than to snap off. Now then, moving on to a third torch. This is a Verilux Micro, and it has a slide switch, which is all done via magnets within the body, so there's no means of water getting into this unless you were to undo it too much. So you just slide it up, that turns it on, and as you pull it back slightly it reduces how bright it is. So they're all variable, these models, which is great depending what you're doing. You know, if you're perhaps using it to light up an area that you're going to take a video of, you wouldn't want it on full blast, because the sort of piercing spot, if you will bleach out the photograph that you're taking. So just by having a little bit of variability to how bright it is, you know, could make the difference between a good picture or a good video compared to not. Now I'm going to show you on this one. If you wind it out, it's an aluminium body torch, as most of these are, and there's two quite decent size O-rings. What can happen is bits of grit, as you're swimming along through wrecks or whatever, can get in and amongst it, and if you don't clean it off it becomes quite hard to use. So I'd suggest buy yourself a little pot of silicone grease, grease up all the threads once you've cleaned them down and the O-rings, so when you are nipping them up, nothing's getting pinched or too tight to undo, especially if you need to take the battery out to charge. If it's nice and greased, it's easy to get it out, get it on charge, and then fire another one back in for the next dive. I think the plus side with these rechargeable batteries is several things. First of all, you're not putting any more waste into landfill. Second of all, you can charge them whilst on the move. So if you realise while you're packing your kit on the way to the dive site you've perhaps not got enough charge, because of the nature of how these are charged via a USB cable, you can plug them into your car or your van. You know, even if you've not got a USB socket within there, you can buy these that plug in now to your cigarette lighters, and you can probably have two batteries being charged on the way up. So depending on how far your dive site is, you know, you could have fully charged batteries by the time you get there. Now this isn't by all means all that's available, but these are the style and types that we use, and we use them for a reason, because we've progressed through the cheaper variants that you can buy off the sort of internet that's sent over from China, and they do all this and they do all that, but realistically what you want is a torch that can turn on and it be bright enough to light up the area that you're diving, and that you can turn it off. And if you've got the means to charge it or replace a battery that's no longer functioning, then that's great. All these that I've had to buy my own batteries for are available from the corner shop. These two from Northern Diver, you can buy these batteries straight off Amazon and they'll be there the next day. So should you have one of them failures and can't get to Northern Diver to buy a new one, you can get on Amazon, have them. You know, they're pretty much a standard size nowadays, although it's not your standard sort of AAAs, double Ds, whatever. You know, they're a different number altogether, but you can find them quite easily because it's printed on the side of the battery. And just think about what kit you're going to get. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask me. There's always a comments box at the bottom, put them in there. Hit like if you enjoyed what we videoed today. Other than that, there's a subscribe button here if you want to see the next videos we pull out or previous ones, and then the bottom video to my left is always going to be the video of when we went to the farms a few months ago, and then the top video will be last week's. Thanks for watching. See you on Insta.